Hello, I'm Hendrika Devries, and I am the author of When a Toy Dog Became a Wolf and the Moon Broke Curfew. I'm also one of the earlier alumni of Pacifica Graduate Institute. In fact, I attended when it was still called the Human Relations Institute. I've been a marriage and family therapist with a Jungian orientation for over 30 years in private practice in Santa Barbara. And I also have been an adjunct faculty at Pacifica Graduate Institute in both the counseling psychology program and the mythological studies programs. As a therapist, I often shared some of my early stories with people and was told to write a book. I hesitated because my memoir is the story of my childhood in Nazi-occupied World War II Amsterdam. And I have lived a long and successful life. So many other people did not. They suffered horribly and died brutal deaths during those dark days. And so for many years, I hesitated about publishing a book. However, when I saw torch-bearing neo-Nazis bearing swastikas marching in Charlottesville, Virginia on my television screen, I realized I didn't have a choice. I realized that those of us who have witnessed brutality, oppression, and have experienced how quickly our freedoms that we take for granted can be extinguished. And we have seen how hatred spreads like a deadly virus through a community with lightning speed. We have an obligation to tell our stories, a duty to tell our stories to future generations. And let's be clear, it's not just my story. It's the story of every child that has suffered violence, bigotry, or perhaps had to run, as I did, from a mass shooting to save her life. It's the child at the border, the child in the inner city that goes to school hungry, the child who is mocked because of difference. However, my book is not just about suffering, but as Dr. Jeanette Paris said in her lovely endorsement of my book, it also offers a psychological framework that can guide anyone facing adversity. How do we empower children? How do we empower people in the midst of suffering to access their strength? The images of the toy dog that becomes a wolf and the moon that breaks curfew reflect real events that I talk about in my book. I saw my mother and others in the resistance movement refuse to act like toy dogs, like passive toy dogs, as women were trained to do in those days. Instead, they accessed their wolf-like strength to resist. So the images in the title of my book may reflect real events, but they also reveal a much deeper archetypal meaning. The moon, that is so often seen as feminine in our mythologies, because it is seen as reflective light that is deemed of less value than the active burning light of the masculine sun, became for me an image of powerful female strength that I witnessed in those dark days. I learned that as we each reflect on our experiences and stories, we, like the moon, shine a light in the dark. And we shine a light not just on the abuses and the painful experiences, but also on the amazing strength and resilience in the human spirit. And as we share our stories and bring them together, we, like the waxing moon, reach the fullness of the moon, which my mother once called the miracle moon. And that's a story in my book, a real story. And that miracle moon shines a light that reveals a path home, a path to our moral conscience and our shared humanity, where we discover that the powers that want to extinguish the light do not have the last word. And that's why we must share our stories. Thank you for listening.